your way of not thinking too much?
Do you really think it's your mental processes which is creating a problem for you?
No, the fact that I think too much.
Even if you're bursting forth with thought, suppose you have the most active mind on the planet, why should that become a cause of problem for you?
Because I second guess and I...
Suppose you had a mind which was tremendously active and efficient, where you could just act and your action is in such a way that you're not becoming enslaved or entangled in the process. Would your thought processes be a problem for you?
If I would act without being entangled?
Yes.
No.
So that is essentially the problem.
Being
is
entangled.
That while the mind is active and while you're employing your thought processes, you're getting highly entangled in the process. What that means is you've lost your clarity. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a loss of clarity. Now, why isn't it possible for you to be able to use the mind and the body, yet at the same time your clarity is preserved? That is a possibility. So, absence of thoughts or the presence of thoughts, where there is clarity within you, then either way your freedom remains undisturbed. So, do we just want to eliminate thoughts? Maybe you would. It'll bring you some temporarily silence and contentment within you. But we should understand this. Something can only be truly understood through acceptance, not through rejection. If there's a machine that's working here, and I want to have an understanding of what is the mechanism of this machine, what do I do? Should I pull out the electrical switch, or should I let it run its course? And then observing from a distance. Like that, the mechanism of your own mind, if you really want to have understanding into it, we have to have total acceptance. So, this is the usual tendency of human life. What we find pleasant, we want to gravitate towards it. What we find unpleasant, we want to gravitate away from it. But we need to understand something about the nature of this mind. The nature of this mind is in such a way that it's just like a sponge. A sponge is just absorbing everything. Everything that's coming into you, it simply absorbs. So, whether you're aware of it or unaware of it, this can be demonstrated. Suppose you're in a deep sleep, and there's the sound of running water in the background. When you come back to your wakefulness, this is something psychologists know, he can put you in a certain state of hypnosis and make you remember exactly what it is you had experienced. Because that's how this mind is. This mind is just like a sponge, just absorbing everything. So something is arising within you which you dislike, and you think, okay, I can escape from it. So you want to repress it, you want to keep it hidden, but it doesn't disappear. What happens is it just shifts down into your unconscious mind, and then it picks up force, it gathers force there. So this is why you'll see people, for example, who are repressing sexual desire. Day by day, they go on repressing it, repressing it, repressing it. One day it builds up such intensity within them that it just explodes. So we don't want you to have a repressed mind. You don't like them, whatever stories your mind is inventing. But by repressing it, that's not a solution. So we want a solution, and the solution can only come through insight. As far as I'm concerned, the quality of insight, when you see what is happening within you clearly, its quality is just like medicine. It has this transformative quality. So for that, what is it that preserves your clarity? To put it very simply, is when there comes just a small gap of distance within you between the observer and that which is observed. If just this small gap of distance arises, and you're not attaching the idea of I, me, or mine, thoughts are arising, thoughts are simply happening. You're not perceiving it as my thoughts. Emotion is arising, there's simply emotion. But again, you're not attaching the idea of I, me, or mine. The moment the mind does that, then you're caught in what we call ego, the egotism. and look at it out of your own logic. So many of the problems of your life have always been directly connected to the ego, haven't it? So let's have a logical, systematic approach. Just look into this. Because you're not aware of what is your true nature. When I say your true nature, I mean something within you which cannot be created or destroyed. This body can be created and destroyed. This mind can also be created and destroyed. But if you're in tune with another realm within you, which is beyond birth and death, then we say you've come into union with your true nature. Now, out of ignorance of what is this nature, now you start creating a substitute, a false identity, a false persona. That's what we call ego, or the sense of I. Now, once this sense of I comes, then there comes the desire for self-preservation. You want to protect this limited identity. Once this self-preservation comes, out of that comes fear. Out of fear comes attachment. Out of attachment comes suffering. So that's the mechanism of suffering in your mind. And it has to be seen directly, as it is. As it is means as it's manifesting in this present moment. Past, you can never observe what's happening in the past. Future has not arrived. You will never be able to observe the future. If we want to have an understanding of insight into ourselves as we are, it's only possible through the door of this present moment. So, one part of being involved in the spiritual process means is that you are having a systematic approach to your well-being. Now just look at this. Why has modern science had such huge influence everywhere all over the world? Whether it's in America, whether it's in China, whether it's in India, whether it's in Australia. Why is it that modern science has had such mass influence? Because modern science, it doesn't care what beliefs you create in your mind. It doesn't care what philosophies you've created in your mind. Only thing modern science cares about is, can it be put to practical use? Do you understand it, and can you put it to practical use? So we have an external science to observe facts that are happening outwardly in the world. In exactly the same way, there's another kind of science to observe the facts that are happening within you, an internal science. And part of this science is what I call meditation. So does that mean that logic is everything? No, logic cannot be everything. Because logic is limited, but within it, this small circle of logic, things can be reliable. If you can see the facts that are happening through this small circle, then your logic can be very reliable. So logic, it can only take you at the most to the seashore, but it cannot help you to travel the ocean. For that you need something else, another kind of intelligence. So oftentimes I know people think that intuition and reason are somehow opposites, like they're working against each other. That's impossible. Because let's look at this. Reason, rational mind, has evolved from instinct. The earliest intelligence that happened within life was instinct. And we've evolved from all the other animals. Modern science knows this also very well. The earliest part of the brain is at the very base of the brain in a place called the brain stem. This brain stem is very survival oriented. Fight or flight, kill or be killed, reflexive kind of behavior. Evolving from the brain stem came the limbic system. Still we're within instinct, but limbic system is more emotional. Out of the limbic system evolved the irrational mind. So what I'm trying to say is there's a single intelligence within the human being, which is expanding itself from one dimension to the next, to the next. So just as reason has evolved out of instinct, in the same way, what we call intuitive intelligence, the intuitive mind, evolves out of reason. So how can they be opposite? They cannot be opposite. So, just to have a better understanding of what's involved, I think once I told you a story of, there was once a master who had a disciple, and this disciple, he was constantly, all the time, complaining about the miseries of his life. So, he told, one day the master just told him, okay, here's what you should do. Just go get a glass of water and some salt and bring it to me. So the disciple did as he was instructed. The master then told him, okay, just take a handful of salt and put it in the glass of water and have a drink. So the disciple had a drink. Then the master asked, tell me something, how does it taste? The disciple said, it tastes totally bitter. So then quietly the master and the disciple, they just walked outside to a lake. And the master said, okay, now do the same thing. Just take a handful of salt, swirl it in the water of the lake, and have a drink from the water. So once again, the disciple, he had a drink from the water. The master asked him, now tell me, how does it taste? The disciple said, oh, it tastes totally fresh. Then the master responded, he said, the pains and sufferings of your life, it's just like that. It's just like a handful of salt. Not more, not less. But if you enlarge your sense of being, if you enlarge your consciousness, if you enlarge the container, then there comes a freedom within you that remains undisturbed. So stop being like this limited glass of water. Become the vastness of the lake. So that's exactly what it is like when you're moving into higher and higher levels of consciousness. You find the more aware you become within yourself. With increasing awareness, there comes a decreasing sense of ego. You know, for example, that's what happens when you go to sleep. When you fall into unconsciousness, you're not aware, but the sense of ego within you has disappeared. But when you come back to your ordinary consciousness, you're the same human being with the same desires, the same attachments, and so on. So just as it is possible for you to move into lower unconsciousness, but the sense of ego is dissolving, in exactly the same way, it's possible for you to move into higher consciousness. And as you move into higher consciousness, the sense of ego gradually dissolves. So what I'm trying to say is that if life has to become an expression of freedom, one needs to move beyond this small, limited identity, because all the problems of life are created there. Does that mean you cannot have a personality? No. But assume your personality was highly flexible. In this moment, if you need to be a father, you're just a father. If you just need to be a mother, you're just a mother. If you just need to be a gardener, you're just a gardener. Like that, if the personality was highly flexible, like water, then personality is not a problem. But that's not the way that we are. You know, we are very prejudiced, and that's the problem with human beings. We want the whole ocean to come to us, not understanding that it's the human being who must become receptive to the ocean.